At any point during Ms. Heard's and Mr. Depp's relationship, did you ever see any injuries on Ms. Heard?
No.
How about on Mr. Depp?
Yes.
When did you observe injuries on Mr. Depp?
The first time would have been around 2014, I guess, in which he had his finger was damaged from an incident in Australia.
Do you know how Mr. Depp's finger was damaged?
Objection. Foundation.
Foundation?
It's just background if he knows. I won't ask the full
I'll
the
sustain
following
the
question.
objection unless he was an Australian and saw it himself.
Okay.
Okay.
When else did you see injuries on Mr. Depp?
I saw another injury around, would have been March of 2015. He had a swollen kind of cheekbone eyelid.
Your Honor, if I may please pull up a photograph, exhibit number 146,
All right, just to the witness?
just for the witness, that's
Okay.
correct.
I'm sorry, 146?
Yes, thank you, Your
Thank
Honor.
you.
And that's plaintiffs, obviously.
Plaintiffs,
Exhibit 146. Mr. Bett, do you recognize this photograph?
I do,
And how do you recognize it?
because I took that picture.
Why did you take this photograph?
Well, we needed it as evidence in case Ms. Heard tried to make allegations towards Mr. Depp. I was emphatic with him, telling him that's a serious mark and we need to photograph it.
I just moved to strike for foundation.
I'll allow that answer, but thank you.
And when did you take this photograph?
It would have been around March of 2015.
Your Honor, we ask that this photograph please be published to the jury and admitted into evidence.
Any objection to 146?
No, Your Honor.
All right, 146 in evidence and be published to the jury. Thank you.
Mr. Bett, what does this photograph show?
It depicts a swollen upper left cheekbone with redness to it.
Thank you. Did you notice any other injuries on Mr. Depp?
On that specific day, no.
Later in time, did you ever notice any other injuries on Mr. Depp?
I did.
Can you please describe what you recall?
It was around December of that same year, 2015. He got into an argument with Ms. Heard and she scratched him and he had injuries.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustain the objection, only your observation, sir, what you saw.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Bett, can you please describe the injury that you saw on Mr. Depp?
Yes, he had scratch marks around his nose area. I believe on one of the sides of his face in the cheek area and then on his forehead.
And if we could just have published to the witness plaintiff's exhibit number 65.
65.
And Mr. Bett, this is a 3-page document, so if I can have Mr. Arnold Blair please scroll down.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Do you recognize these photographs?
I do,
And how do you recognize them?
because I took them.
When did you take them?
Mid-December 15th.
And why did you take these photographs?
I took him to show proof that he once again had injuries sustained in an altercation.
Your Honor, we'll move to publish these photographs to the jury and for admittance.
All right, any objection to 65?
No, Your Honor.
All right, 65 in evidence, it can be published.
And Mr. Bett, would you please describe what we're looking at here?
The first picture, there's a laceration on the left side of his nose. It looks like the left upper cheek has a slight bruise to it. And then on his forehead, right above the ridgeline, just almost to the center, it looks like there's a red scratch mark above his left eye and to the right.
Do you see that in the same subsequent pictures in page 2?
Okay, page 2, I see a scratch mark, a vertical scratch mark adjacent to his right ear on the right side of his face.
Same question for page 3.
Page 3, there's a scratch mark on the lower right portion of his chin. There's that same scratch mark on the center left side of his nose, and you could see the frontal portion of that bruise that's on the left side under his eye.
Were you surprised to see Mr. Depp with these injuries?
Objection, leading.
All right, I sustain as to leading.
Did you ever see any similar injuries on Miss Heard?
None.
Did you ever see any injuries on Miss Heard?
I didn't.
Did Miss Heard ever tell you she was being abused by Mr. Depp?
She didn't.
Did she ever ask you for help?
No.
Did you ever see any evidence that Miss Heard was being abused by Mr. Depp?
I didn't.
Turning to April 21st, 2016, Mr. Betts, do you remember anything about that day?
Yes, that was the day or evening that Miss Heard was celebrating her birthday with some friends.
Do you recall what birthday Miss Heard was celebrating?
I'm sorry?
Do you recall what birthday Miss Heard was celebrating?
I believe it was her 30th, 29th or 30th.
Your Honor, if we may, can we just remove the exhibits?
Oh, yeah,
Thank
sorry. Thank you.
Other than Miss Heard's birthday celebration that evening, do you recall anything else about April 21st, 2016?
He had a meeting that afternoon, and which extended into the evening, and that was, as I said, the night of her birthday party, where they got into another argument, and she had struck him in the face.
All right,
Objection, move to strike, Your Honor.
sir, if you didn't see it, you can't testify to it, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The jury will strike that answer. Thank you.
Your Honor. Were you with Mr. Depp when he attended the meeting that you mentioned earlier?
I was.
And if you know, who was that meeting with?
It was with his accountant,
And who is Mr. Depp's accountant?
Ed White.
And where did that meeting take place?
It took place at his old production office in the Los Angeles area.
What happened after the meeting ended?
When the meeting ended, we drove to his West Hollywood address, which might have been maybe 5-10 minutes away. He had to go inside the house and retrieve something. I don't know what it was. We were only there a short period of time. And we were kind of rushing because, you know, we had been running late because it was a birthday dinner. And then we eventually left thereafter and headed back down to the penthouses downtown Los Angeles.
And how would you describe Mr. Depp's demeanor after the meeting ended with Mr. White?
To me, he looked fine. You could tell he was in a hurry, and he was, you know, telling me, okay, we got to hurry up and go to the house real quick before we go downtown. But other than that, he appeared fine to me.
And based on your observations, Mr. Bett, did Mr. Depp appear to you to be intoxicated?
He didn't.
I believe you testified that after you left the meeting, you went to Mr. Depp's home, his residence in West Hollywood, and then on to the Eastern Columbia building. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. What happened after you arrived at the penthouses for Miss Heard's birthday dinner?
We went upstairs, and she was having a dinner with her friends, and one of the penthouses, I believe it was penthouse number 5. We entered the front door to that penthouse. Amber stood up. She walked towards Mr. Depp. She had a look of, you know, you could tell she was upset, the fact that he was late. You know, Mr. Depp apologized to everybody, apologized to Amber, and, you know, told her, you know, sorry, baby, or words to that effect for being late. She gave him a hug and a kiss and said, you know, come sit down, sugar.
Was that a nickname, a common nickname Miss Heard used for Mr. Depp?
Yes, she used to call him that quite frequently in front of me.
Approximately what time did you arrive to the Eastern Columbia building?
It would have been somewhere between maybe 9 and 10 o'clock in the evening.
Do you know what time the birthday dinner for Miss Heard was scheduled to start?
I can't remember the exact time.
Do you recall how late you and Mr. Depp were to the birthday dinner?
I knew we were running behind, but as I said, I didn't know actually what time the dinner was starting.
And once you arrived at the penthouses at the Eastern Columbia building, did you go inside?
Briefly, I had a couple of Mr. Depp's computer bags and bags with me, and I just set them down in the corner, and then I exited thereafter.
How long did you stay at the Eastern Columbia building after exiting the penthouse?
I was probably there perhaps maybe another hour or two, and then I would have been relieved by the night shift security personnel, Travis McGivern.
Did you happen to work the next day on April 22nd, 2016?
I did.
Where did you start working on that day?
On that day, I drove to his West Hollywood address because Mr. McGivern had sent me a text message stating they had an argument.
Objection, hearsay.
All right, sustain as the hearsay.
Why did you start your shift at the Sweetser property, or Mr. Depp's West Hollywood property, as opposed to the Eastern Columbia building?
Because that's where Mr. Depp was at the time.
Do you recall anything specific about that day, April 22nd, 2016?
Just, he had told me they had
So
a,
I'll
Objection,
sustain
hearsay.
objection. You cannot say what he told you, sir. I'm sure you've testified before, correct?
I have.
Yes, thank you.
Did you see Mr. Depp when you arrived to his West Hollywood home on April 22nd, 2016?
I did.
Did you observe any injuries on Mr. Depp?
I didn't.
In this time frame of April 2016, do you recall Mr. Depp's mother having any health problems?
Yes.
What do you recall about her health problems?
At that time, she was very critical. She had been suffering from cancer for some time, a few years, I believe. And at that stage, she was slowly deteriorating. So it was approximately a month before she passed.
Do you recall when she passed away?
I believe it was around May 20th, 19th.
And how did you learn that she had passed away?
Mr. Depp told me.
And again, based on your observations, how would you describe Mr. Depp's demeanor when he informed you that his mother had passed away?
Well, he just lost his mother, so he was, you could tell he was, very sad, and he was mourning. And so I just left him alone until he needed me for whatever I had to do for him that day.
And to your knowledge, Mr. Bett, when was the next time Mr. Depp saw Ms. Heard?
Maybe a month later, sometime in May.
And I'm sorry, was that a month after the birthday dinner on April 21st, 2016?
Objection, leading.
I'll sustain as to leading.
To your knowledge, after April 21st, 2016, when did Mr. Depp next see Ms. Heard?
In my presence, he would have seen her May 21st.
And was that after Mr. Depp's mother passed away?
Correct, that would have been a day after she passed.
I have approximately 10, 15 minutes left.
I'll let you finish. Is that okay with the jury? We'll finish at least the direct. Okay,
Thank you.
that's fine.
Turning to May 21st, 2016, please tell us what you remember about that day.
That day, we were at his West Hollywood address. Jerry Judge, his chief security guard, was with me and with us at the estate at the time. Later on in that evening, Mr. Depp told us that he wanted to go down and retrieve some items from the penthouse. And he also wanted to talk briefly with Ms. Heard.
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
All right.
It's just to establish.
All right, you want to talk to Ms. Heard? That's fine. We'll leave it at that. Next question.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. So you were working on May 21st, is that right?
I was.
Did you end up taking Mr. Depp to the penthouses at Eastern Columbia Building?
I did, and Mr. Judge was along with me as well.
And do you remember approximately what time you arrived at the penthouses?
It would have been sometime after 7:30, maybe 7:45, 7:15, around that time frame.
And was that in the evening?
It was.
Did you enter the penthouses with Mr. Depp?
I did, myself and Jerry Judge and Mr. Depp.
And what did you see when you first entered the penthouse?
When we first walked in, on the center island in the kitchen, there were candles lit on the table. There was a couple wine glasses that were empty, and there was a bottle of wine that was open. There was also music playing in the background through the speakers that were in the wall.
Did you see Ms. Heard when you first entered the penthouse?
I didn't.
What happened after you entered the penthouses?
After we entered the penthouses, Jerry Judge told Johnny that myself and
Yes.
Objection, hearsay.
All right. I'll sustain the objection. All right, next question.
Okay. Did you stay inside the penthouse with Mr. Judge and Mr. Depp?
No, shortly thereafter, Mr. Judge and I exited the penthouse and stood outside the door briefly.
How long would you estimate that you stood outside the door of the penthouse?
It would have been approximately maybe 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less.
And after standing outside the penthouse for 10 minutes, give or take, where did you go next?
We walked down the hallway to penthouse number 5. Penthouse number 5 has 2 doors. There's a main entrance that takes you into the living room, Next to it, around the corner, it's a continuation of the penthouse, which is like a storage area. It also has, it had a couch at the time and a TV for the security personnel. So once we were at the penthouses, we could go in there, have lunch or dinner, or watch a little bit of TV. And then, whenever Mr. Depp or Ms. Heard would leave and I'd have to drive, or the other security personnel, we would get a text, or they would come and knock on the door, and we would leave.
And when you first arrived to the penthouses with Mr. Depp, based on your observations, was he drinking?
He had some glasses of wine at the meeting he was at with his accountant.
Apologies, Mr. Bett. I meant on May 21st, 2016.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Did you observe Mr. Depp drinking any alcohol that day?
He might have had a glass of wine in the car, but as far as the entire day, I wouldn't have known how much he drank.
Did he appear intoxicated to you when he arrived to the Eastern Columbia building?
No.
So you went to the storage area of the penthouse area. How long were you there?
We might have been there maybe 10 minutes, 5 minutes. We got something to drink, and then we exited that penthouse I described, or that penthouse storage area.
And where did you go next?
We walked down the hall towards Mr. Depp's penthouse, which would have been penthouse number 3.
And did you stand outside the door, or did you go in?
As we approached the door, we could hear the screaming and shouting from Miss Heard. So I immediately opened up the door, and Mr. Judge and I ran in there.
What do you remember Ms. Heard screaming or shouting?
It appeared she was shouting profanities. So once Mr. Judge and I went through the front door, Mr. Depp would have been standing directly in front of us, maybe about 20 feet, because parallel to us walking in or running in, there was a wall. It was the way the kitchen was set up, it was almost like an L shape. So you walk in, and then you'd have to make a left. So Mr. Depp would have been standing in front of us, and he glanced at us. As soon as Mr. Judge and I rounded the corner, I saw Miss Heard standing next to her good friend, Raquel Pennington.
And how was Ms. Heard standing? Where were her hands?
Her hands would have been in this motion. Once Mr. Judge and I rounded that corner and she saw both Jerry and I, she had this look of surprise on her face, and then she looked at Mr. Depp and us, and she shouted out loud, "This is the last time you do this to me." At which point Mr. Depp looked at her and said, "What the hell are you talking about?" At that point, Mr. Judge tapped Mr. Depp on the arm and told him, "Boss, let's leave." So we gathered, there was a couple of computer bags that was right on a table, and we exited the front door to penthouse number 3.
Based on your observations, did you have a clear view of Ms. Heard?
I did.
Did you have a clear view of her face?
I did.
Did you observe any injuries on Ms. Heard's face?
I didn't.
Did you see any redness,
I didn't.
swelling?
None.
Was Ms. Heard holding her face?
She wasn't.
So what happened next?
We exited penthouse number 3 and we walked down the hallway. Right when we were getting close to penthouse number 5 door, Mr. Depp says, "I need to get in here and look for something." So I opened up the door for him. We went inside, and that's when I saw Miss Heard's friend, Raquel Pennington's boyfriend, Josh Drew, and another unknown female that I'd never seen before. And there was a small dog kind of walking around. Mr. Depp, I believe he said, "Get the fuck out of my apartment." So Mr. Drew nodded his head and basically said, okay. The female picked up the dog, and they exited the front door to that penthouse.
What did Mr. Depp do next?
He was walking around the kitchen area, living room area. He might have gone upstairs briefly. I can't remember. I don't know what he was looking for. I didn't ask him. Mr. Judge didn't ask him. Eventually, he didn't find whatever he was looking for, and we exited penthouse number 3.
And while Mr. Depp was in penthouse number 3, did you observe him cause any damage?
No,
Did you observe him cause any damage to any of the penthouses on May 21st, 2016?
no,
Did you see Mr. Depp become violent with anyone while at the penthouses on May 21st, 2016?
Objection leading.
I'll allow it, that's fine.
I didn't.
Mr. Bett, have you ever seen Mr. Depp become violent with Ms. Heard?
I haven't.
Thank you. I have nothing further. Your
All
Honor.
right.